Hey there friends, it's Missy again. Thanks so much for stopping in today. I'm so excited to finally be back with a layout using older supplies. I've been wanting to make a layout just for fun, using some of my hoarded stash for a long time, and then my channel was down and I just got super busy once it came back, and now I finally have some time. So I pulled out some of my old stash from My Mind's Eye, and I think I've got 3 different collections here. They're all from 2013, 2014, and I'm going to see what I've got and see what I can make with it. And I also want to use this stencil from my stash. It's very well used, very well loved. And I want to use this paper as my background. I've got some papers here from the Cut and Paste collection, from Jubilee, and from Now and Then. And so these are quite old, but I'm going to try to make these older papers, you know, look new and fresh for my taste. So we're just going to start and see where it takes us. Now, I do want to do mixed media on my background, and since this paper is heavily patterned, I want to kind of create a white space. So I want to fade out some of the pattern, and the best way to do that for me that I found is white gesso. And I'm going to use my silicone brush there to scrape it and smudge it down. I'm going to use my fingers to kind of smudge it around the edges and kind of fade it out. And I have had some questions lately about this silicone brush that I'm using. I'll link it down below. They do have them on Amazon. They're not too expensive at all, but they're really fun to use and make spreading gesso really easy. And you can also use them for paint also. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I let the gesso dry, and then I'm going to come in with gelatos. I haven't used gelatos in a while, and I chose the color scheme that you just saw there a second ago on those 3 papers. I liked how they looked together, aqua, pink, and then kind of an orangey coral color. So I'm just going to go for it and start making a background. I don't even know what picture I'm going to use yet or how I want to organize this page. I just felt like doing this at the moment. And so all I'm doing is taking the gelato and kind of scribbling it down on top of the stencil in the spaces, and then using my finger to smudge it. Now, if you don't want to get your fingers dirty, you can use gelatos with a brush. They react really well with water. You know, they kind of act like watercolor once you add water to them. So, you know, these are very versatile in that way. And yeah, they mix and blend really well together. This is my water brush. I bought that thing years ago, and for whatever reason just got away from using it. I don't know why, because it's awesome. You put water in it, and then you basically just squeeze it a little bit when you want water to come out the end of it. And so you can control, you know, how much or how little water you need at the time. And so I'm just going to use my fingers. I'm going to use a little bit of that water brush to kind of spread the color around. And would you look at that? I've used up an entire blue gelato. The end popped out. Just like when your chapstick gets low. Yep, same concept. So, and that's the only color I have of that one. So I was kind of sad about that. So I kind of had to move on to some different colors of blue ones, but I'm going to keep working, and I want this to be more on the aqua side. So I pulled out an aqua one and then a really light blue color as well. And so I'm just going to kind of go from pink to blue and kind of add in some of that orange coral color as we go. And I did want to note that I do know that this video is very long, but I wanted to keep as much of the process in as I could. It took me about 3 days, you know, working in spurts to get this layout finished in between homeschooling and the kids and all of that good stuff that everybody's experiencing right now. And I wanted to leave in all the important parts. I wanted to show you how I make the background and just share my thought process about how I think about things as I'm doing that. So I've got kind of one strip of pink, one strip of the aqua, and I'm going to add a little bit more pink in over on the other side of the blue area. I'm going to use a lighter pink gelato here to start. And I had to be careful to not go overboard. I didn't want to cover the entire background with the stencil. I know when we make mixed media backgrounds like this, I know I do. I tend to get carried away, and sometimes it's hard to know when to stop because it's so much fun and it always looks really cool. But for the sake of the design process, you have to kind of pull back and stop. I wanted to just keep going all the way across the page because gelatos are fun, and yeah, I just wanted to keep going. But I stopped, and we're going to continue to work on the background, but I don't want to do any more of the stencil work. I'm going to leave this kind of as a starting point and then continue to work on top of it. So once I got the stencil work done, I noticed that the blue section was a little too turquoise, and I wanted it a little more on the aqua side to match the papers and the embellishments in the My Mind's Eye collections. So I'm just going back over some of the blue section with that aqua gelato and then using the water brush. So I wanted to add some splotchy areas to this, and I'm going to use the gelatos again, and this is another way to use gelatos. I scribbled some down on some plastic packaging and then mixed it with some water and flip it over and smudge it down. And so, like I said earlier, you can use gelatos kind of like watercolors. They do water down. You can use them with a brush. They work really great with the plastic packaging technique, just like I did. So I'm going to kind of smudge some of this background up here. I didn't want it to be completely just the stencil work. I wanted you to be able to see some of the stencil work, but I also wanted some watercolor splotches. And this is kind of helping me figure out where I want to put my photo. Or photos. Wasn't sure at this point. I was thinking of a black and white picture because there's a lot of black elements in some of these collections, and I like the black on the background, and I felt like the direction I was going, a black and white photo would be best to really let the colors show through. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to do another little plastic packaging splotch with the aqua gelatos. And I'm not trying to completely ruin the stencil shapes. I just wanted to kind of use that as a starting point and then work around that and add to it. And in the end, you can only see some of the stencil work. But that's okay. I think it turns out all right. Now what I felt like I needed was more orange because I did want, there are 3 colors I'm using. I felt like I didn't have enough orange. So I'm going to come back in with more of an orange gelato instead of a coral color one and go back on top. And the good thing about the gesso, everything starts with a G. The good thing about the gesso is when you add something on top of it and it may be the wrong color or you added too much of it, you can easily use a napkin or a paper towel to dab it up. It's not going to just soak right through your background. You see how I'm able to smudge and blend and add water to all these colors and then use a napkin to kind of take some of it up? That's the gesso allowing that to happen because nothing is soaking through the paper. The gesso is kind of a barrier. It primes the paper for all of this liquid that I'm going to add to it. And I'm not adding a ton of liquid. This is still just regular pattern paper. Although I did discover that this old My Mind's Eye paper is pretty thick. And it worked really, really well with all this mixed media. It didn't really warp. You can kind of see here how it's laying pretty flat for me adding all this stuff to it. And so I was very impressed by that. I hadn't used My Mind's Eye in so long. I had forgotten how thick and durable their pattern papers were. So that was a nice surprise. So I did pull in some shimmers. I love me some shimmers. And these are all coordinating colors. They match exactly what I'm using here. I'm going to add a little bit of that aqua color. It's called Well Blue Me Down. And then the pink color that I just splattered around is called Sweetheart. And yeah, I just used the nozzle to kind of splatter some messy little splatters around. That's the orange color that I'm trying to go for. And I love orange and pink mixed together. And I think it looks really pretty with the aqua kind of mixed in there. I'm going to add in a little bit of a darker pink. This is called Pink Stilettos, and it's a lot deeper of a pink shade. And I'm going to add in a little bit of that. And again, I'm just using a tiny bit of water from the water brush to kind of blend and let the color kind of bleed. So I got it dry, I took a break, and then I decided to do some stitching. I went with black thread and I just kind of stitched along the edges of the arrows or the chevrons from the stencil. And this is the picture I'm going to go with. I decided to go with a larger picture than I normally use, and it's black and white like I said, and it's pretty much a close-up of my daughter, and I felt like it was the perfect size, and like I said, the black and white, perfect. So we're going to go with that. And I've got some papers here. Some of them, like I said, I've already cut into from, I think that was from the Jubilee 6x6 paper pad. And I'm going to back some of them behind the photo, just with a little bit showing to kind of give a little bit of border, some layering behind the picture. Layering is great behind your photos because they kind of help separate the photo from the background, and it kind of enhances the photo. Kind of just helps it stand out a little bit more and not get lost in the background. And this is why whenever I use a pattern paper as a background, I like to kind of fade out the pattern with gesso, especially where the photo is going to go, because sometimes pattern papers can be so patterned and so busy that it kind of can take away from your photo, and your photo just kind of gets lost or blends in with the pattern. And I feel like taking away some of that pattern just where the photo is, it kind of makes the photo stand out a little bit more. And in this case, you know, if I'm going to add mixed media to it, I like to have a little bit of white space. It just helps everything kind of stand out more. So these are just embellishments. There were pocket life cards, there were chipboard pieces, die cuts, stickers, all the stuff. A lot of it I had already used or had used some of it. This little ice cream cone was so cute, and it was on a project life card or a pocket life card. I can't remember what my mind's eye called it, a 3x4 card. And then I found a chipboard one that had the orange color on it. I found this chipboard speech bubble that has the word hey in the middle. Again, all these three colors. I just kind of sorted through and picked out everything that had these colors or had white or black on it. And there were some little label die cuts. There was that little balloon. There was that scalloped pink piece. Some stickers that I'd already used some. Arrows. Little pieces with words on it in a scripty font. So I'm just playing around. I just picked everything and started to kind of work it around the photo, above the photo, to the side, below it, and just kind of see what may look good where. And as I was saying in the beginning, I think I said it, I've said it a million times, that, you know, your background is going to get covered up a little bit, and that's okay. That's the nature of building layers and building the layout, is some things eventually do get covered up, and I'm okay with that. And I feel like, you know, if there's not enough of that background mixed media work showing, I can always add more once everything is added. I'm going to take the sticky part off of this chipboard piece because I want to be able to move it around. I'm not sure where it's going to go, and I didn't want it sticking to everything. Even after all these years, it was still quite sticky. I was impressed. It held up the sticky factor, but I didn't want it to. I'll glue it down later, but I wanted to be able to move it around. And I'm going to kind of tuck it underneath the photo there. And then you saw me cut up a plastic piece. This collection had a lot of overlays, the piece with the hearts on it, kind of like an overlay, and I didn't want to use it as an overlay. So I just cut the edges off, and I'm going to use it as a layer. So you can see there on the left, that black piece. I felt like since I'm using black and white around the layout, I needed pops of black around the layout. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm going to glue that together since I know that that's where it's going to go. And I did add some adhesive foam behind the picture. I know I did that earlier when I was yapping about something else. I really love that scallop piece. I think it's really cute, but I'm not going to use the entire one. I'm just going to use the part that I cut there. And this layout has nothing to do with ice cream. I just thought that they were cute. And, you know, sometimes it's okay to use random images on a layout. I used to be, my mind would only let me use things that made sense. You know, if I was going to use a bicycle, it had to be a photo of someone on a bicycle. And now I don't know. If I like the way it looks, I'm going to use it. So I always say, if you like it, just go for it. You know, there's no rules. I used to make up those rules for myself, and that's a silly rule. You can use random things on your page. There are no scrapbooking police going to come to your house and arrest you for not using your products in a literal way. Nope. You can do whatever you want. So that's like a liberating feeling, I think. If you don't like it, cut it up. If you want to only use a piece of it, cut it up. It's okay. It's okay. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm adding some thread. I used black thread first down there at the bottom. Again, I wanted to pull some of that black down to that section. And I'm going to wind up layering some stickers and some die cuts all down there beneath the picture because they were just all perfectly matching and they just went so well. I couldn't resist just using all of them. Using some aqua thread over there to the right above the ice cream cones because I didn't have anything in that color in that area. And so the thread is a good thing to add there because it adds pops of color. It also adds texture. Okay, so underneath that scallop piece, I've got a sticker that says Best Day Ever, and then a couple of blank label die cuts underneath that. And I mainly just kind of layered those together like that to bring pops of those colors to that area. I'm not going to write anything in those labels. You know, labels are great because you can actually use them for labeling. You can put dates, you can put journaling in there. You can use them blank. So I'm going to use them blank and then come in with some of those little die cuts with the words on them down there. I think one says cute, one says sweet. Oh, I was so excited about this. Check this out. These are rub-ons from 2014. And I thought this is never going to work, but let's give it a whirl. And check this out. They actually rubbed on like butter. I mean, they worked perfectly. I could not believe it. Because usually rub-ons have a quick shelf life. They tend to go dry pretty quickly and then they're ruined and you can't even use them. And so for these to last 6 years, that's crazy. So yeah, pleasant surprise. So I'm going to go back to that overlay that I started to cut up earlier with the two black pieces on both sides of the photo, and I'm going to cut up these hearts and scatter them around the layout. Again, that's another example of, you know, using something differently than it was intended. And I love that about going back to older collections like this and finding things to use in a different way, because back in the day when this was brand new, all of this collection was new, I never would have thought to, you know, cut it up. I always wanted to use things as they were, and if I couldn't find a use for it, then I just wouldn't use any of it. And so the fact now that I'm okay with cutting things up and making them work for me is awesome, and I highly suggest you do that because it's liberating to be able to go back and just cut things up and make them work for you. So I'm going to go ahead and glue down the hearts. And I love how they look. I love the pops of black that they give around the layout. And I was kind of torn on the title, so I took a break from that title and I pulled out the brads. Check these out. Good old-fashioned brads. Yep, I'm going to use 3 of them. And these are the kind that you have to poke a hole through the paper. I can't tell you the last time I've used a brad that pokes through the paper. And so I was excited because I wanted to use them. And they kind of remind me of enamel dots or, you know, epoxy dots, those type of things, except these actually poke through the paper and you fasten them in the back, and they're awesome. So I used a couple of those, and then I'm going to continue to glue things down. I'm going to use that little hay piece over to the bottom left of the picture, and then I'm just going to continue to work on gluing little odds and ends down. I've got some little tiny heart pieces that I'm going to tuck in a few places, and some chipboard buttons that I'm going to work with later. All right, so check out this stash. Talk about hoarding. Look at all of these alpha sticker sheets that I have. I mean, really? Did I have to buy one of every color? Did you do this? Did you go through whenever you could and buy every single color of every single sticker sheet? Because you just knew that you were going to run out? Yeah, apparently I did not run out. Look at that. It's ridiculous. I'm kind of embarrassed that I showed you how many alpha stickers that I have, but yep, now you know. I'm going to go simple with the title. It's just going to be Hey Paige, because I say that all the time, and I didn't want a huge title, but I did want it to be black, so that's why I chose that particular sticker sheet. And I did glue those down because nothing ever sticks to gesso, so I did do that off camera, but that's boring, so I cut that out. Now I am going to take some black embroidery thread and put it in between the buttons, or not in between, but through the holes in the buttons, because I wanted them to look finished. So I did that with black thread. And then I put some black splatters down, took a break, came back, and decided I needed to continue and do more stuff. So I pulled out some of this polka dot paper from the 6x6 Jubilee paper pad and my 3¼ inch circle punch, and thought I would just add some more of that color around the page in the form of these little circles. And I'm going to pop some of them up using adhesive foam, again, just to create dimension. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the pink, because, you know, we don't have enough pink. You can never have enough pink, right? But at this point, I felt like, I didn't know, I didn't love it. I didn't love it. So I just kind of played around with some of the circles. I took some of the pink ones off. Took another break. This is the next day. This is the third day. And you can kind of see there what I've got going, the dimension and all of the layering. And I wanted to jazz up the edges. And I had this piece left over from some project years ago, this black and white stripe paper. You can't go wrong with black and white stripe paper. So I just kind of sliced off this part that had already been torn. I'm going to ruffle up the edges with my edge distressor there and stick it over on the right side. And I think this just kind of makes the layout. And, you know, sometimes I like to leave the edges blank. I do that quite a lot. But sometimes I want to jazz the edges up and give them some life. And so that's what I'm going to do here with this black and white paper. And I think it makes all the difference. And I love that it's black and white on black and white paper. Like the background is black and white, and then this paper is black and white. But it's totally different because, you know, the black and white stripes are bolder. And I love the effect of that. So I'm going to come back with some more things. I felt like I needed to make a little cluster over on the right side, and I'm going to fussy cut out this love piece from a sticker. I didn't want to use the whole sticker. Back to what I was saying earlier, you know, don't be afraid to cut something out. And I like that it's white with pink around the edges. I wanted a little bit of all three colors up in this area to create a little cluster. And I wanted to try to use some more of these phrase stickers because I have a ton of those. I'm going to cut this balloon die cut up and use it as basically an orange circle because I wanted something pink, something aqua, and something orange up in this little cluster. So I'm going to use all three of those circles and then tuck in some orangey coral color. It matches, if you want to call it orange. It's not true orange, but it's not true coral either. Thread to add some texture, little pops of color. And we are getting close to the end, finally. I really wanted to use one of these little phrase stickers from Cut and Paste. It says, I love everything about you. I'm going to wind up moving it. I stick it over here to the left, but it just kind of looked weird over there by itself. So I'm gonna move it over to the right. And then I did some stitching again off camera. I just did black stitching underneath the best day ever, and then up here underneath that little U sticker. And then we're gonna finish this baby off with some black splatters. And then I went to write my journaling down at the bottom, and I thought that it would be okay, but since the pattern is kind of busy on the background, my black pen just blended in and you could not read it at all. I couldn't even read it up close. So I'm going to smudge some white gesso over it to kind of create another little bit of white space. And then right on top of that, and it's much better. It's much more visible. And that is it. Finally, we're done. I love how this turned out. And I know, remember back in the beginning when we used the stencil, a lot of that got covered up, but you know what? It's okay. It was just a starting point, and it kind of helped me get going with the layout. And I still love how this turned out. I love this color scheme. I love all the bits and pieces that I used. This was so much fun to do. It was so fun to just dig into my stash and use some old stuff and try to make it new again. And I hope this inspires you in some way to do the same thing. I know that most of you have some old stuff somewhere in your craft room or in your closet or on your shelves. And just because it's old does not mean anything. You know, you can make it look new again just by using different techniques. And so let me know if you have any questions about this. I had a lot of fun putting it together, and I'm going to try to make more of these videos as often as I can. So thank you so much for sticking with me, and I'll see you next time.